You know, there's a thing that happens when you're reading a book, right? When you start a book, maybe it's a book you've never read anything by this author before, or maybe you have, and you get about, I don't know, like 10 pages in, and you go, oh, hold up. Wait a minute, I need to stop for a second. This is a good book. I can't just go and just read this book like I would read any other book. I need to kind of pay attention. And I could tell that right away when I started this book. That's super vague. Here we go. Black Leopard Red Wolf. Marlon James is the writer. It's a fantasy book set in sort of in a fantasy Africa. This book is probably the best fantasy book I have read in so long that I can't tell you how long it's been since I've read something this good. The voice of the narrator is so dead on. It is such a hard thing to do, to have a character carry that narrative the whole way and be so strong. And it is excellent. And the portrayals of some of the other characters are so good that when they leave and they come back sometimes, you get excited to see them again. Not just because you like the character, whether you like the character or not, but because you know that that portrayal of them, that presentation that Marlon James is giving you of them is so expertly done. If you look at the average person saying what their favorite is, it's not. They don't mention this book. They say they don't like it. They didn't read it. I think there's a decent amount of that, or there's a notable quantity of fantasy readers that do not include this book in a list of favorites or outright say they don't like it. The main character is, I want to say he's bisexual, but really I think he's homosexual. I think that he has a predilection towards other men. I think a lot of people don't like it because it's not just window dressing. The main character is, I don't think he's ever really given a name. He's just called Tracker the whole time, right? He is the Red Wolf of the title. He's not ashamed of what he is. The world that he lives in tends to dislike that. I don't know if it outright hates it, but maybe it does. For a lot of people, I think the reason that they dislike it is because it is not just window dressing. It is not just sitting in the background and you say, oh, this character's gay. No, this character falls in love with people, has intercourse with people, and that's part of the book, right? It's not salacious. It's not gratuitous, but it is present. And these are his experiences, and these are experiences that are important to him for the story that he's telling. And that makes sense. The relationships that these characters have are authentic. When one character really falls for another character, you believe it. And it's kind of wonderful. The world that Tracker inhabits, this world in Black Leopard Red Wolf, is a very harsh world. There's slavery, there's rape and sexual assault, there's child abuse, outright murder, torture. That probably makes a lot of people, maybe even you, say, this book's not for me. But wait, it's not perverse. And I think that's where I get irritated when I hear this book say that it's sort of a fantasy Africa version of Game of Thrones, or rather a fantasy Africa version of the Fire and Ice Saga. No, it is not. The Fire and Ice Saga plays heavily on perversity, right? When the Lannisters, brother and sister, sleep together, it's presented in a sort of salacious, sort of perverse way. The stuff in here that is despicable human activity is not presented salaciously. It's not presented for kicks. You should not get pleasure out of the bad things that are happening in this book. You don't feel good. And that way, this book is similar to a lot of stuff that I've read of Ursula K. Le Guin. For example, her Left Hand of Darkness. When I read Left Hand of Darkness, I felt like I was rereading that book Night about the Nazi prison camp, the survivor. But it reminded me of that. Left Hand of Darkness had scenes in there where like really harrowing. It's done because it's real to the world and authentic, and this narrator, our narrator Tracker, has an unflinching view of his world, and you have to come to understand why he is so angry. He says more than once, nobody loves no one. A lot of bad things happen to him. I would probably say for some people there's some trigger warnings in here. I mean, probably is a very light word. There are triggering things in here for rape, I would say, for sure. So those scenes, those bad scenes were hard to read, or I thought they were kind of difficult to read. But they made the book that much stronger because that unflinching view showed us the kind of world that he had to exist in, that he had to survive in order to just get by, to get this little tiny piece of happiness that he struggled so hard to get. And you know, when it's described, when this little bit of happiness that Tracker gets kind of at the end, man, it really moves you. You get it kind of third hand. You know, it's not Tracker telling you it. Very powerful. I was very moved by this book. I got to step away from that for a minute because it's really starting to mess with me. You know, a lot of times people say, oh, I love this fantasy world, I want to live in it. I would not want to live in this world. This world is horrible. It's horrible. But I can't wait to go back. It takes real professional storytelling to make you want to go back to a place that was terrible. You know, that makes sense. That's supposed to be a compliment. It should come off that way. So diverse and interesting in its portrayals of its characters, in the supernatural creatures that you get to encounter. And they're nasty. And you know what? They're nasty in a way that's real. That's why I like the narrative, is because the world is horrible, nasty. These horrible, nasty things happen. And these monsters are horrible, nasty, right up there to that line with everything else. They go right all the way up there with everything else. They're monsters in all senses in a lot of ways. And I think that makes them that much more scary. The fantastic elements are so different than anything else I'd read. That was something I really enjoyed. I never felt like I'd kind of seen this thing before in another book. I don't think I ever felt like that. I think every time I encountered something supernatural, I really, as a reader, had no idea what it was or what was going to happen. And it sort of builds this great mythology slowly as you go through the book. You kind of get this, you learn a little bit about this supernatural creature, and then you learn a little more, and you learn a little more, and you kind of get a better and better picture of this world. There's never really an info dump. I don't think there's any kind of info dump in here. No big exposition about what this or this was. Not really. I don't think so. I mean, if there's ever an exposition, it's two characters talking, and in their conversation they have that exposition. And it's always authentic because they've encountered this thing and somebody knows a little bit more and they find out. There is definitely a lot of exposition that's given in dialogue, like I was saying, that later proves not to be true or is not entirely true. I think that sort of serves sometimes when you learn about these supernatural things or you learn about this or that there's some uncertainty in you, just as there would be maybe in someone in that world, as to whether this is how this thing works or not. You never really are certain. You don't really get to find out the inside track any more than these characters would know. You only get to know what these characters know. And the world is slowly unveiled through these conversations they have, the encounters they have, and it makes for a really rewarding world building experience, although I'm not really super into the world building thing that a lot of people are. It can be nice, and I just really like the way that he does it here, because it's not this big exposition. It's part of the book, and I love it that the characters get to tell me these things in their own words with their little personality thrown on top of the story or twisting the story just a little bit, and I have to interpret, well, yeah, but this guy's this way. What does that mean? So, really enjoyed that. Are the heroes anti-heroes in this book? Sure they are. Sure they are. I still came to love them. I had so much joy in reading about Tracker and the different things that he did and how he handles different situations. A lot of fun. Black Leopard is the other titular character here, and Leopard is that character, I say, when he goes away and he comes back, after he's been gone a while, you're so excited to see him, and he has the way his character talks, and his speech patterns are just just kind of really get you keyed up. He's making jokes, and he kind of like you kind of get a thing like when that character comes back and you're kind of excited about it and you kind of smile like there as you're reading the book, and you're like, oh, I must look like an idiot reading this book, what's wrong with me? but you know what? You have fun, so who cares? And it's kind of almost like a like that sort of sword and sorcery friendship that you get, like with Farfod and the Grey Mouse, or like Elric and Moonglum. Very similar in a sense with Tracker and Leopard. Really great. It is a little graphic, definitely. Really great action too. The action scenes are really good, fast-paced action that you would hope for, which is something you kind of read fantasy for, right? I thought they were excellent. I thought they did very well. It definitely held their own. I think they're worthy of a good action story. I don't know, I could sit here for a long time and tell you about what I liked about this book. A lot of times I listen to audiobooks. I listen to this audiobook. And this is one of those times where I'm doing something else when I listen to the audiobook, you know, something kind of semi-mindless, you know, something that doesn't require my full attention so I can pay attention. And there were multiple times reading this book, I had to stop what I was doing and either rewind because I wasn't paying enough attention, or, that's on me, or because I just needed to stop because I couldn't, the book commanded that much of my attention because what was happening was so engaging, I just couldn't focus on what I was doing. And the book was just that much more important at the moment. I don't know who's seeing this or who's going to see it. My goodness, a fantastic novel. I'm going to say there's no fantasy book. I'm trying to think of a fantasy book, a single book that I have enjoyed or relished or appreciated more than this book, and I'm honestly coming up short. When I read it, it shot into my top 10 or whatever right away. I mean, it was so fast, and it's earned that position in a reread. You know, I never reread a book that soon. No, I mean, I guess part of it's because I'm rereading it so I could talk about it, so I needed to really see it again so I could really make sure I kind of had things straight. But I never reread it. Mother, well, I lost the light. I talked so damn long about this book, I lost the light. I never reread books. Almost never. Very rarely. I have so many books to read. It's harsh, it's nasty, an ugly, ugly world with a lot of ugly, ugly people. And this small group of people tries to scrape together something wonderful and meaningful in all this nastiness, and it's rough. And god damn it, I loved it. Black Leopard, Red Wolf, Marlon James. I cannot wait to read that other book. Actually, I can wait because I've been waiting. But you get the idea. I'm really excited about reading the next book because I totally found this book randomly at a used bookstore, and there was a copy there, and I pulled it off, and I'm like, what is this book? And I looked it up, and I'm like, oh man, the reviews are all over the place in here. It's like everybody's either 5 stars or like 2 stars. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Man, I like the cover. It's really awesome. Amazing cover, by the way. And also the audiobook, Dion, I cannot remember the reader's name. Man, I'll put his name on the bottom. He did a wonderful, wonderful job in the audiobook. I had to slow it down a little bit. But I think that's because of the way that Tracker's language is, because he has sort of an abbreviated language in the book, and it makes it, took me a little bit longer to key into that language and be able to hear it and process it quickly. I don't even know what the fuck I was going to say. God damn it, this book is great. Oh yeah, I was at the damn bookstore. I saw it, I'm like, okay, I put it on my list. And I just was looking at the reviews, and it just seemed like it really, like not very well considered negative reviews. Nobody was really saying anything like, oh, it was these ugly people, nasty people. Well, I didn't like any of the characters. Well, I mean, I've read many books. I didn't like any of the characters. The book was wonderful though. And I'm kind of holding back a bit because I don't want to, I'm worried that I'm going to spoil something. If I try to talk about anything specific that happened, then I'll kind of screw it up for somebody. I don't want to do that. Go buy new copies so that Marlon gets a cut. I don't know what he gets. You know, I bought this, bought the audiobook. I think I bought another copy for some family members because I thought that they were sounding interested. I'm like, I'm going to buy a copy because the best way to show appreciation for someone you care about is to buy them a piece of art, you know, that they can experience and have a wonderful time with. This is really a wonderful piece of art, and I want to say thanks to Marlon James for making it because it really meant something to me. Done.